A true master at exploring the human heart, hope and fear, joy and sorrow. I might go as far as to say Henrik Ibsen is my second favorite playwright at this point, only after Shakespeare. Hi, it's Nicole from A Day of Small Things. I read, watched and listened to Hedda Gabler a while back and completely fell in love with the character, even though she's not a likable or commendable woman. You can hear all about it in this video. So if you are going to give Ibsen one chance, I'd wholeheartedly recommend Hedda Gabler, especially if you like Anna Karenina. Since then, I've been getting to know other works by Ibsen, the 19th century Norwegian playwright. I'm going to tell you about 5 plays by him today: Brand, A Doll's House, Ghosts, An Enemy of the People, and The Wild Duck. For each one, I'll tell you briefly what the story is about and for which kind of readers and tastes I'd recommend it to. Number 1, Brand, published in 1866. Brand is the name of the protagonist, a fiery, uncompromising priest who believes in absolute ideals and total sacrifice. He meets a happy young couple on the way to his home village. His shocking speech about God and his fearless attempt to help a dying man attract the young wife Agnes. The villagers are also much impressed and ask him to stay. He agrees, marrying Agnes, who leaves her first husband, and they settle in a sunless valley. Brand is zealous and wholehearted towards his mission, but he's an unyielding, unfeeling, hard man. When his mother is dying, he refuses to visit her unless she renounces all her wealth and pride. The messenger says she begs for you to come. She would give away part of her money. Brand says no and sends the messenger away. The messenger comes again and says she would give away 9/10. Brand insists it has to be 100% and she dies. There are other extreme examples of his hard heart. The doctor advises him to move to a warmer climate for the sake of his baby boy. He refuses to leave and the baby dies. His grieving wife asks to light candles on the windowsills so the spirit of the baby can look into their room and see the Christmas tree. It's on Christmas Day. He orders her to close the shutters and forbids her to cry. When the gypsy woman pushes into the house and demands clothes for her child, Brand pressures Agnes to give all their son's clothes away. She tries very hard to obey him and follow his way, and he kills her in the end. Brand is left alone, rejected by the community. In the end, facing an avalanche, he hears a mysterious voice questioning whether salvation lies in love rather than law. I find my usual way of close study quite difficult to apply to Ibsen because I can only see it through translations. There are a lot of symbols and motifs I notice, but I don't fully understand. For example, there is a witch who is haunted by a hawk and kills it in the last scene. What do the small village church and the ice church in the mountains stand for? The play discusses Brand's sometimes admirable, sometimes destructive all or nothing philosophy. It discusses the cost of spiritual and personal sacrifice versus one's religious convictions. It discusses the character of God. What is God truly like? I cannot tell if Ibsen is approving or critical of Brand. That's one reason I think it feels a bit like Shakespeare. We're not given the answer, just a flawed character struggling against himself and the world. Brand is for me the most difficult and the most fascinating story on this list. The theme of the story is religion. I think those of you who enjoyed my Jane Eyre miniseries would find this thought-provoking. Number 2, A Doll's House, published in 1879. The radio drama I listened to adapted this play to an Indian setting, which I think works the theme out brilliantly. Nora Helmer, whose name is changed to Niru, is a cheerful, somewhat frivolous wife, doting on her children and husband, Tom, a British man, who has just been promoted to the chief of the tax office in Calcutta. Tom adores Niru as an exotic plaything, calling her skylark and palm squirrel. He has a strict view on morality. He sacks an Indian employee, Das, as a punishment for his shady money-lending business and forged signatures. But there's something that Tom doesn't know. Niru secretly took out a loan from Das years ago to save Tom's life, forging her father's signature. Das threatens to reveal the truth unless Niru persuades Tom to give his job back. Niru fails, and a letter arrives from Das, threatening to reveal everything. Knowing how relentless Tom is on this moral flaw, the emotional pressure inside Niru is suffocating. She thinks of death to protect Tom's reputation. When the letter is opened, Tom's reaction is revealing. He cares only about his own reputation and the happy and perfect facade of his marriage. The climax is quite unexpected. I thought the main conflict would be how Niru and Tom deal with the truth and the aftermath of the scandal. But instead, the threat is retracted and all is well. Surprisingly, that's where the climax comes in. Niru realizes that she has been treated like a doll her whole life, first by her father, then by her husband. She is never taken seriously as an intelligent, responsible human being. She is literally a pet, a skylark, and a palm squirrel. Will Niru choose discovering her true worth and identity, or keeping a happy marriage and living an easy and luxurious life? Ibsen often has a woman as the protagonist of his plays. Even when they are not the main character, they play a key part, like Agnes in Brand. I don't know much about Ibsen as a person, but his portrayal of women's internal struggles is excellent. You'll like this one if you like a fine feminist story with a young heroine who goes on a journey of self-discovery. Like in A Doll's House, a woman, Mrs. Alving, carries the weight of the next story. She appears in almost every scene. One of the discussions that happens in A Doll's House is the impact of parents' sins on their children. That discussion carries on as a major theme in our next play, Ghosts, published in 1881. This story is for those who love a family tragedy. Mrs. Alving has spent her life preserving the illusion of her late husband's respectability, despite his debauchery and infidelity. She builds an orphanage in his name to symbolically rid herself of his legacy. Her son, Oswald, returns from Paris, suffering from a mysterious illness, later revealed to be congenital syphilis, inherited from his father, which is scientifically incorrect. Congenital syphilis is a condition passed on from the mother, which deserves discussion of its own in the context of the play. Oswald has romantic feelings for the maid Regina, who turns out to be his half-sister, a child of his father, Mr. Alving, and the maid. Oswald slowly realizes his father was not who he had thought he was. Regina leaves the house bitterly disappointed and angry, hinting that she doesn't care about throwing away her prospects and ruining herself. The play ends with Oswald begging his mother to euthanize him if his illness renders him helpless. All the characters are haunted by the ghosts of the past. The chief ghost is the recently deceased Mr. Alving, who never appears in the story but is at the center of every conversation and every scene. According to Mrs. Alving, who has suffered terribly and worked to the bone to preserve the illusion of the marriage and reputation for years and years. According to this poor woman, Mr. Alving appeared as a respectable gentleman, but was in fact a beastly alcoholic, idle and lazy, unfaithful to his wife. However, later on, also from Mrs. Alving, who cares about ideals rather than truth, we discover that Mr. Alving wasn't always an alcoholic and idler. Mr. Alving was deeply unhappy, and Mrs. Alving might have been a jailer who, for appearance sake, locked his unhappiness and himself up altogether. This is my personal reading and interpretation. You need to find out yourself what you think about the couple. Oswald briefly mentions society's attitude towards work in Ghosts. Is work a punishment, or is work a way to have a fulfilled life? This theme appears in our next play, An Enemy of the People, published a year later than Ghosts in 1882. This is the most masculine play on this list. Another theme that An Enemy of the People shares with Ghosts is the importance of truth. Ghosts discusses family and personal truths. An Enemy of the People discusses truth in politics on a community and society scale. It seems to be a matter of fact and goes without saying that the public always wants the truth from the authority, but this play tells a different story, especially when truth is in the way of money. Will truth always prevail? What does it cost for a man to speak the truth? Dr. Thomas Stockman, the town's medical officer, discovers that town's public baths, central to its economy, are contaminated. He shares the news with his wife and friends from the local newspaper, who are eager to publish the story. Stockman's brother, Peter, the mayor, arrives and warns him to keep quiet, fearing the ruin of the economy and reputation of the town. Thomas refuses, insisting that public health must come first. Peter threatens Thomas with dismissal and social disgrace. Thomas is stunned that the town's leaders would suppress the findings to protect their financial interests. The press, initially supportive, also turns against him. Thomas becomes more defiant, determines to speak the truth no matter the cost. And at a very sweet moment, his practical-minded wife, who has been persuading him to back down and think about their future and their young children, decides to stand by him to speak the truth. Thomas is branded as an enemy of the people. The mayor and those in authority manipulate public opinion and impress upon people that Thomas tries to destroy the town's economy, while in fact Thomas cares deeply about the well-being of the town. Thomas is ostracized. No press will print his findings. No place will let him speak. He decides to hold a public meeting in a friend's house to present his findings directly to the townspeople, but the meeting is hijacked by Peter and others who label him a traitor. The crowd turns hostile. This scene reminds me of Coriolanus by Shakespeare, with Thomas Stockman's hot temper and the fickleness of the crowd. Thomas delivers a passionate speech, not just about the bath, but about the moral corruption of society and the tyranny of the majority. Thomas and his family get home and discover their house is vandalized. He has lost his job, his home is under attack, and his children are being expelled from school. Yet he remains defiant, partly because of his conviction, partly because his family and a few close supporters remain loyal, which makes such a difference to the overall spirit of the story. Compared to Brand, who is zealous and committed to his ideal in a similar way, Brand's wife and child die for it. which is so much more bleak and makes us question his decision. But with the full support of his family, Thomas Stockman is an absolute hero in the face of a sea of enemies. He declares that truth and integrity matter more than public approval, and the individual who stands alone in the right is the strongest. The play is a political drama, and I enjoyed it more than I expected. It discusses topics like the conflict between truth and economic interest, the courage of individual conviction and the cost of speaking out, family loyalty and civic duty, the dangers of majority rule, and the manipulation of public opinion. There's also an interesting discussion of the role of the press. The Wild Duck is a tragedy about the Ekdal family, and the themes are truth and illusion and the destructive power of idealism. Ekdal lives in a humble house with his father, his wife Gina, and 14-year-old daughter Hedvig. The grandfather lives in a fantasy world, pretending to hunt in their attic, where they keep a wounded wild duck that Hedvig is deeply attached to. Gregers Waller, a childhood friend of Ekdal, returns home and tries to liberate the Ekdal family by exposing long-buried secrets. Gina had a romantic relationship with another man before she was married to Ekdal, and that her daughter Hedvig may not be his biological child. Gregers does it because he believes that truth will do them good, so that the family doesn't live a lie. In reality, the revelation breaks the family into pieces. Ekdal does not have the backbone to face the truth and solve the problem. Instead, he storms off without the maturity to have a decent conversation with Gina, who has loved and served him wholeheartedly for 15 years. Hedvig, desperate to prove her love to the father she adores but now shuns her, sacrifices her wild duck and takes her own life. The husband, Ekdal, is the character I dislike most on this list. He's similar to the husband in A Doll's House, who does not see the value and worth of his wife. However, though Tom in A Doll's House proves to be a self-serving man, he is at least good at his job, has moral integrity and professional principles. Neeru's fear for Tom is a fear of justice. Ekdal is a failure whose pompous self-importance is unconditionally accepted by the love of his family. Instead of being grateful and working hard in return, he thinks of himself as a genius and a king. His photography business was set up with another's money, and he doesn't earn enough to support his family. But he thinks so highly of himself that he is dismissive about taking on small jobs and making portraits for ordinary people. His wife runs the business for him as well as the household. He feels entitled to bring home guests, demanding nice meals on the spot without any concern for Gina's anxiety about money or workload. He's a big baby who can't live independently. When he threatens to leave Gina, he can't even pack his own bags. He says, "I'm leaving straight away," but can't find his hat, and then has the cheek to sit down and eat at her table. At the end, Gregers believes he sees Hedvig's death has brought out the greatness in Ekdal. It has made him a man. It's shocking then to hear the doctor, a family friend, refutes that in 9 months' time, little Hedvig will be nothing more to Ekdal than a good subject for pretty speeches. Gregers' idealism hasn't brought new birth in Ekdal. It only brings death to a child. Ekdal will not change, and Hedvig dies for nothing. I would have always said that it's better to have truth. I still think so. But I'm not quite sure what to do with people like Ekdal who cannot take truth. What do you think? Apparently, Chekhov was critical of The Wild Duck, but Wild Duck is the one that reminds me of Chekhov most. Maybe give this a try if you like The Seagull by Chekhov. Have you watched or read any of this? Which is your favorite Ibsen plays? Let me know. That's all for today. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in my next one.